This is Ari Koretsky, and welcome to Jews You Should Know, introducing the broader community to interesting and inspiring Jewish men and women making a difference in our world. Some are already famous, some not yet so, but each is a Jew you should know.
We are back with another terrific episode. This week, a very unique presentation because our featured guest is a woman named Jackie Engel, or at least that was her name until the other night. It's now Jackie Glaser. And Jackie is someone I've known for a long time. This is another episode that was recorded live in Toledo, Spain, on the recent OLAMI Global Forum. Jackie was one of the main organizers of this global event, again bringing together around 700 people in Spain for a leadership conference, students and young professionals from over 20 countries. Well, one of the really special things that happened on this conference was that Jackie got engaged. Her soon-to-be fiance was flown into Spain and proposed in very dramatic fashion in the hills of Toledo, and then right after that joined the broader conference where everyone was enjoying a concert by renowned Jewish music artist Jacob Rupp in a very picturesque scene overlooking the canyons of Toledo. And it was an incredibly beautiful way to celebrate an engagement, and everyone was thrilled to celebrate with her right after the proposal. And she was called onto stage and given a special award, and then special singing as well by Shweki and others who joined. Well, we conducted this interview the very next morning, and you'll hear there's a joy and giddiness in the air that she was feeling, and I was quite honestly feeling as well. Jackie is someone I've known for many years and worked with for many years, and what's really exciting is that I'm releasing this episode now specifically because just the other night, for those listening again in real time here on June 17th, 2019, just the other night, this past Thursday night, she actually got married, and this was only a few weeks after the engagement. They decided, rather than have a lengthy engagement, since they live on different sides of the country, and they were eager to just tie the knot and make it happen, they were able to pull together an absolutely beautiful wedding in a very, very short period of time, really a record-setting time, I believe. And it was a wedding I was privileged to attend, along with several hundred others who were just so happy to be there and celebrate this next chapter so shortly after the engagement, and they are now going to be married and moving to Los Angeles to start their lives together. But in any event, Jackie is someone who has a really fascinating life story and also has done a tremendous amount for the cause of Jewish outreach, and specifically focusing on empowering young people, students, and young professionals through her student leadership initiatives, which are groundbreaking within the broader world in which she operates. And we got the chance during this conversation to learn a lot about those initiatives, as well as her own background and where she's going in her life. So I'm very excited to bring this specific interview to all of our listeners right now, as she is in the midst of still celebrating her marriage. And again, whenever you're listening to this, you'll gain from it, but for those listening in real time, it's still literally in the afterglow of her wedding. And so I figured that was an appropriate time and a very meaningful time to release this episode. Once again, our usual reminder to please subscribe wherever you might be listening to this show, and also to tell your friends and anyone you encounter about Jews You Should Know. You can follow us on Instagram at Jews You Should Know, spelled out fully, as well as on Facebook. Twitter is spelled Jews You Should Know with the letter U, and please feel free to reach out to us by email anytime at jewsyoushouldknow@gmail.com. And now, without further ado, to the outskirts of Toledo, Spain, to our conversation with OLAMI Leadership Department Chair and fascinating woman, Jackie Engel Glaser. We are here with Jackie Engel, and we're here on a very special day because just last night, Jackie got engaged in Toledo, Spain, wherever we are. We're here on this OLAMI Global Leadership Forum, and her husband-to-be surprised her in Spain with the proposal. Pretty exciting, huh, Jackie?
It definitely left me speechless, which is rare.
And so I think you were actually genuinely surprised. Is that correct?
I had no idea, and the whole team was in on it. They all booked his tickets. They organized everything from a few weeks ago. They took his name off the guest list every time I looked at the guest list. And it was a complete shock. I literally was shaking and had no clue that he was in Spain. And then we had a great concert with Shweki and danced with 700 of our closest friends.
How many people get a live concert with a world-famous musical act on the night they get engaged?
I'm still not processing it. I'm still not quite able to put it all together. I just feel grateful and blessed.
I'll tell you, the night I got engaged, I hired an a cappella group to come and meet us, and they were dressed in street clothes, and they came in sort of incognito, and then they came and started singing. Oh. So I thought that was very romantic, but this tops that big time.
Well, when Aaron Wilson gets involved,
you don't mess with a billionaire, you know?
You don't get much choice other than to go big or go home.
That's it. So, Jackie, we're here in Spain for this amazing conference, which you were so instrumental in inaugurating. But I really want to dig back a little bit and understand where you're coming from, what your background was, and how you really arrived at a day like today in a place like Toledo, Spain. So, Jackie, where are you from? We'll hear the accent, I think. Tell us a little bit about your early upbringing.
How far back do you want to go?
I mean, in utero is probably a drop far, but, maybe right after, postpartum, let's start.
Okay. I was born in Montreal, Canada. And
that's not a Montreal accent, Jackie.
No, it wasn't. So it gets more interesting. My parents were moved there for my father. He was a doctor, and he was put on sabbatical at McGill University. He was a lung doctor, and he went there for 10 years. And they had my brother and I while we were in Canada, and then they went back to Australia, which is where they were originally both from.
Were they from, your grandparents from the war? How did they get to Australia?
My mother's parents were Polish and came out before the war to Australia. And my father actually was a Holocaust survivor.
Wow.
And he was hid in basements and did all of that, just like Anne Frank. It's a similar story to Anne Frank. And his mother and him, he was a baby, went on the run after 1 week. Her parents and siblings and husband were killed, my grandfather. And they went into hiding and changed identities. I mean, literally like a movie. I can't even imagine it. And he grew up in this kind of hiding experience of not seeing sunlight for over a year or two and stuff like this. And then they escaped eventually to Australia as far away as possible. Let's get as far away as possible from any danger. So growing up with the kangaroos was quite safe and protected.
You said your father was a baby. Did he have any memories of this period of his life?
I don't think so, but it definitely goes in the experience of being on the run for your life. How could it not, But it probably explains why we had very little to do with Judaism. My whole upbringing. So I didn't even know when Yom Kippur was or what
really?
It was, or Rosh Hashanah.
Nothing.
Nothing.
We
did a semblance of a Passover Seder.
So they identified as Jewish?
Oh, yeah. Semblance of a Passover Seder. We had Hanukkah presents and Christmas presents. And that's it. That literally is it. My brother had a bar mitzvah and that's it. I didn't have a bas mitzvah. And we went to some sort of version of Sunday school for a while. So we obviously thought it was important enough to know something, but it was tedious and we hated it and whatever. And that was it until... I got into psychology and I had a psychology career. I had a practice. I was really happy. Everything was going well. All my friends were not Jewish, so I wasn't even culturally Jewish.
Where in Australia were you guys?
Sydney.
You were in Sydney, which is the less Jewish of the...
Yeah, much smaller Jewish community. And we didn't go to Jewish schools or anything. So at some point we had a nudgy relative. Everyone has at least one in the family that nudges you about it.
I have more than one, but okay. I'm not naming names, though.
Exactly. I can't name the names because we love her. But she kept saying, go to Israel, go to Israel, go to Israel. And we're like, why? We don't want to go to Israel. I want to go to Europe. I want to go traveling, with my friends.
Had you done any traveling at that point?
Yeah, but in college is where Australians really travel, hard. And because we're so far away, so once you get out of the country, you really go hard and go for a long time. And so I was stubborn, like a Jew is, and I didn't give in. And I didn't go to Israel. And so she gave up on me. I went backpacking with my friends, had a great time. Thank you very much. And my brother, who was younger, started becoming of age. And she said, go to Israel, go to Israel. He was weak. He gave in. He went to Israel and loved it, had a great time on a birthright type of thing. And, he stayed on for 2 weeks and just learned a little bit about his Judaism afterwards and just was blown away by the wisdom, the relevance, everything as we know, and started to look into it in a serious way. And I was like, I'm so happy for you. That's fantastic. But I had no interest whatsoever. And he started slowly over the next 2 years becoming more kosher, more Shabbat observant. And at some point I freaked out and was like, oh my gosh, okay, now you have to stop. You're going off the deep end. You're like joined a cult or something. I don't know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a psychologist. It's my obligation to counsel him out of this.
You're a mandated reporter,
Yeah, exactly. Because I knew nothing about it. I didn't know anything. It just looked like whatever was different from the norm of secular society or non-religious society, I thought was bad.
And you were, what, 25 in this story?
I was probably, 26, 27.
Yeah.
And didn't start looking into my own Judaism then at that point because I realized I really had to because my brother was going so far into it till about 28, 29. I showed up at Israel.
Was he in Israel this whole time, or did he come back?
No, he went just for a year. He came back, and then he went back, and then he was back there when I decided, okay, I've got to go to Israel. The Nuji relative was right, and I have to go check it out. And I went to Israel, and obviously saw the same depth and wisdom, especially related to psychology. Actually, that's what really blew me away. Is I learned so much about psychology, and psychology's view on family systems and relationships and happiness and marriage, and then all of a sudden I'm learning the Torah view on those things, and it was just so interesting to compare and contrast. And I just found the Torah model or the Torah approach just so deep and it's so all encompassing. It was just blew me away. Actually, I felt like it was the best professional development I'd ever done.
Did you find it congruent with what you had learned or divergent?
There was definite things that I've resonated with in the psychology world that I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually a Torah source. And I had no idea. I just thought it was Freud. Oh, Freud was Jewish. Okay, fine. Or I thought it was whatever it was. And then there's other things in the psychology world that I thought were interesting, but I didn't resonate with it. And I wasn't necessarily, something that was sourced in Torah, but I found a lot of it sourced in Torah.
Now, while this was all going on, was your brother also being Nuji, or he was kind of keeping things to himself a little bit?
You have to find your way with family. And I think that you can't really help your immediate family connect to Judaism in the same way. It comes with all the dynamics of those relationships. So he tried his best to introduce me and then back away.
Okay.
Introduce me to people that he thought I might like and then say, okay, you choose whatever you want. This push and pull, of encouraging and being there. And I think it made it easier for me to go to Israel because he was there. I wasn't by myself.
Right.
But, I went there and fell in love and realized, oh my gosh, I was on national TV doing the Today Show.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what was going on in your career at the time.
So that's what was happening in my career. And here I was, as on national TV, they had 1 million viewers a segment for Australian.
This is like a daily morning show?
They had daily and I had a weekly segment or bi-weekly. And we call it fortnightly.
Fortnightly, yes, absolutely.
If you must know. Bi-weekly to me sounds like twice a week, to be honest. But anyway.
That's semi-weekly.
Right,
I
okay.
think.
So I was here on national TV saying things like, the way to happiness is to embrace all of who you are. Thanks Oprah for those kind of quotes. It's true. Embrace who you are. You can't reject who you are. Embrace it and work with it. And here I was as a Jewish woman on national TV, having no clue what it meant to be Jewish. No clue what that meant. So I felt like a hypocrite. And at some point I was like, okay, I had that voice in my head. I had my brother already in Israel. There was a few different tensions.
Right. And
I felt like at some point, if I'm really to be honest with myself, I have to check this out.
Wow.
So I went, I checked it out, blown away and realized there's nothing more important to now find out about as a foundation than Judaism. And I developed all my other stuff. My career was peaking, other things were good. But this is one core piece of me that I hadn't explored. So I decided to literally go leave the Today Show. I was there already 2 years.
Was that a grueling decision?
It was scary, but it was really clear that I had to do it at some point. Meaning I went to Israel for 2 months and didn't quit. I went for 2 months and then came back and realized I still had to go back. So at that point, the second time, I said, okay. And then I had this deep, I don't know where I got it from, but I had this deep, deep knowing that if you do something for the right reason and the higher truth, then to develop yourself in some way, I didn't really have the Jewish words for it, you never lose out. So I felt like even though it was really scary leaving this peaking career, I could start a career somewhere else. Why do I think just because now I had luck that I'm going to, I could do a career anywhere. And to be honest, I really believe that there was a blessing that comes back to you when you choose something that's hard, that's higher. And I don't know where I got that from. I wish I had that now in every other area of my life, but I don't. But I really, really had it, an emunah or some faith, some commitment, some knowing that this is the right thing. And even though I did have my freak out moments,
right.
It was always a deeper sense of right.
Yeah.
And then I went to Israel and it was the best thing I ever did in my life.
I think sometimes we're blessed with certain sentiments or certain feelings at certain moments when we need them. and they're not always there for us to to draw from. They're there when we need them. So,
Right.
It's,
Somehow I was able to access that.
Yeah. Was being on TV, was that like a career aspiration you had? Like, that's not a typical path for a psychologist, right? So how did that come about?
Yeah, it was really strange. I mean, I had a background in performing. I was dancing for many years. So I had already this skill that I was harnessing and honing that I didn't really know. I was just a hobby. I loved it. But I just did it on the side, but like really seriously. And I had an agent, when I was going through college and
for dance?
Yeah. So I did some professional gigs. But that was just like side money while I
could have done dance therapy,
I never joined the two.
Right.
But as I was doing my psychology, I did that for some money. So I had a practice, and then private practice, and then at some point, I got a call from a PR company. They wanted a psychologist on the show, and go on Today Show to discuss the survey results of, I think it was dating and relationships or something. And I said sure. So I went on, and it was on one of the things I had to do interviews was on the Today Show. And I remember walking in, talking about the power of intention. I remember walking into this Today Show and saying, "Boy, would I like to walk out of here with a regular gig."
Wow.
I hadn't thought of it really before.
So they weren't bringing you in for that. It was just a one-off.
It was a one-off thing for this particular PR company. And I remember thinking I don't know if I prayed at that point, but I definitely put out there, which really is to God. I'd love to walk out of here with a regular gig. And I left that day, and they called me back all of a sudden. They said, "Come in tomorrow again." And now the other gig was finished, right? The other job was finished. And I was like, yeah, sure. They said, yeah, like our ratings went off the charts. And they said people now have written in questions, so we'd like you to come back in and answer their questions on air.
Fortnightly, come on in.
No, the next day actually this was. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun, great. So I went back in and started, just answering the questions. And then 3 days later, they asked me back in again in the same week, which was unheard of for a guest, onto a panel about dating with the different people. And I didn't know, but they were trialing me, and they were watching and trialing. And
it's better not to know.
I was much better not to know because I was just having fun. This is cool. And then they got me in 2 weeks later and said, "Would you be a resident psychologist on the Today Show?
We'll
awesome. Pick you up in a limo and at 5 a.m, and we'll ship you in."
Is it the same franchise as Today Show in America?
I think so, because we copy you with everything basically.
Same logo and all that kind of stuff. And
similar, very similar format, like the resident doctor, the resident vet, the resident psychologist. I don't know if they still do that now, but yeah, well, it was the same then.
I don't know if they did that ever because I never watched it. Yeah. I was more of a Good Morning America guy. No, neither.
So it was a lot of fun and it was great. But again, I felt like I was doing good things in the world, which I was. But deep down inside, at the same time, looking back, there was like a part of me that wasn't being accessed. There was a part of me that wasn't being utilized or connected with. But I didn't feel that at the time because you don't know what you don't know. But later, as I connected with Judaism, I could feel that it affected me in such a deep way that nothing had ever touched before, like psychology. So I realized there's this piece that's just sitting there dormant and stagnant. And no matter what you do with your career or other amazing things, it doesn't fulfill that piece. And that piece really later on, what became clear was the soul.
Would you say at that time you believed in God, or what was your orientation?
No, I knew nothing.
Well, but not religion, just general.
I believe that we're here for a reason.
Okay.
I believe that nothing's random. I believe that, if I'm Jewish, it's part of who I am, and I should find out about it because it's something to do with my life purpose. I believe those kind of concepts. I believe that it was very likely there would be it makes sense that there would be some sort of bigger force. I called it the universe.
Right.
I didn't know there was a creator of the universe, but I said there is a bigger force. That I believed. So I started, my big breakthroughs really were starting to talk to God, but not calling it God because I didn't know, and saying, talking and saying, and that's how you develop a relationship, asking for clarity, asking for direction, and then things opening up very, very clearly.
So this was all as you were starting to go to Israel and begin studying.
Yeah, just that same time of should I explore my Judaism?
Yeah.
And God's like, yes, in different forms.
How did your parents react at this time?
My father wasn't alive,
okay.
But I'm sure he's very happy now. And my mother, they think, you guys are my brother and I, the only two now observant people in the whole family, the extended family.
Yeah.
So they thought, you guys are nuts. You guys are extreme. You're crazy Orthodox Jews. And I was like, yeah, we're crazy Orthodox Jews. Yep. Mm-hmm. And so as long as you don't make people feel bad, and I'm not judging you, and I don't think you should have to do what I do. This is what I'm doing. And when that kind of dynamic played out, so then they felt safe, and then they're like, you guys are crazy extreme, but can you get the ketubah from Israel? You guys are crazy extreme, but can you put up the mezuzah for us?
Right.
You guys are extreme, but what happens after you die?
Right.
And, I remember, like, these are real questions they asked us, and then we became respected as, like, I guess, the rabbi and the rebbetzin of the family.
You became the resident Jewish authority
Jewish authority,
instead of psychologist.
And so we have great conversations now. And actually, it made us a little closer, to be honest.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So over time, obviously, you did quite a bit of your own study in Jerusalem, and you were, developing as a Jew. And I guess your brother already had kind of forged that path a little bit. Was that a really powerful bonding point? And did he stand there, saying, "I told you so" at the end, wagging his finger, or was he more gracious about it?
No, I think he felt really good.
Yeah.
That, like, he'd introduced me, but he was more like, he knows that everyone has free will.
Right.
And there was a lot for me to kind of change in my life if I wanted to follow this path. Slowly, but still.
Yeah.
So at any moment, someone could say, "Okay, enough for me," or "No, I don't want to," or so he. It was really nice to share that with him. We would go for Shabbats together, and that was really cool. And it brought us for sure closer.
Obviously, maybe the challenges or the impediments perhaps are different as a female versus what he encountered as a male. Was that part of your struggle at all? Try to understand the Jewish perspective or the observant perspective on gender roles and things like that? Or
I fought tooth and nail, like, day and night with the rabbis for a long time. I would just, like, run after them and say, "No, but what about this? What about that? How could you say that? How could you?" And so, like, I would really I really enjoyed the intellectual debate. So I would chase after rabbis and like really argue with them, the poor rabbis. And they had just better answers than me that were much deeper, wiser, interesting, broader, more thorough, and things that I hadn't thought about before. So it was really coming from looking back. Everything I felt strongly emotionally was often because I didn't have all of the information. I didn't have the bigger picture. And then when I learned more deeply about a concept, things shifted in how you see things.
Were there any other particular blockages, things that you really struggled with, or things that that posed a challenge for you and that you had to really understand better? Or
listen, I grew up as a beach baby on the beach, and just running around. Australians, it's beautiful weather.
Yeah.
They hardly wear any clothes most of the year. It's like, so
sign me up.
There's a like a beach culture
right.
there, especially in Sydney. And so to get this concept of like how to still enjoy nature and love nature and be out there and enjoy it, but still then have different values around how you portray yourself to the world as not just a physical being, but also a deeper spiritual being, and how to bring that back into balance as a whole person, which I really resonated with that psychologically and spiritually as a concept. But then how do I match that with my Australian culture and world?
Sure.
Was a challenge, because and again, I think the answer is always just to go very slowly.
Yeah.
And not feel no radical moves, no amputating, as they call it. Jews don't amputate, we just drift. Just drift. And if it feels like an amputation, like I've got to give up something overnight, then there's something wrong.
Right.
Do it. So I had a very good Rabbi Kellerman, who guided me at that time in that way, and was like so chill about it. Like, yeah, don't worry about all the kosher stuff. Just don't eat pork. The first time I went back, I went, really? Okay, I can do that.
Right.
Or just don't eat pork and don't mix your meat and milk. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. Right. Like, it was never intense. I didn't know where it was going to end up. I didn't want to become religious ever. Never. If you ask me, you want to become religious? No way. Are you kidding me? Those like extreme, narrow-minded, insular, like don't really get it. Like, no way. And, at some point, and I realized I was falling in love with Judaism. I said, oh my gosh, you're becoming religious. Like, it freaked me out. And I went, no, I'm not. I'm following a path of Jewish spirituality. It was like, the terms are just
all
so loaded.
semantics.
It's all in the semantics. But what my experience was just so beautiful and deep and real, and, and talk about being passionate about psychology. So this was the whole system.
Right.
So I was so passionate about now the whole system of like developing your psychology and your emotions and your mind and your soul. And it was everything all together that came with this Jewish map that we have called the Torah.
So did you know early on that you wanted to then redirect career-wise into service of the Jewish community?
Absolutely not. No.
Or did you expect to go back and be a psychologist?
I knew I had to be in learning for a while. Didn't know how long that would be. And after 3 months, 6 months, I loved it so much. Another 6 months, loved it so much. Another 6 months. And I ended up staying in Israel learning.
Had you saved up enough money to just kind of support yourself?
I had saved up money. And then I also started to actually work a little bit in Israel, seeing clients.
Did you have to get relicensed there, or how did that work?
No, because in the Jewish world, you just call yourself a therapist, not a psychologist.
Not a psychologist,
and then if they trust you. So that was fine. But there was moments where like, am I going to go back to psychology? Am I going to, like you said, qualify in Israel and do it properly? What am I going to do? And I didn't know, but I just kept learning. I started working at Innovator part-time as a madricha counselor. So I thought this is good anyway to learn the Jewish systems and what's going on and what it's like. And then at some point, I remember thinking, should I start preparing classes? It was the weirdest thing because it was like this little voice inside, just start preparing classes. And I was like, no one's offering me to teach. Why do I think I should teach? Like, why? I didn't want to be a teacher. That wasn't in my dream,
Right.
No, just start preparing classes. It was like this voice in my head. So I was like, okay, what should I? And I asked my Rabbi Kellerman, and I thought he'd laugh at me. And he said, yeah, I think you could probably start teaching. I went, really? He goes, yeah, just go and buy, like Ethics of Our Fathers or something like psychologically related, because it's my area, and start, developing a class. So I did. I went and bought a book. No job offer. No one was wanting me to teach. Why did I have the chutzpah to think that was going to be something? I don't know. And I started preparing, and all of a sudden, the next week, literally is after I bought this book, Rabbi Liff from Neve said, oh, the teacher didn't show up. Can you just sub? I'm like, no, I just bought the book. He goes, what book? I mean, obviously you spoke to Rabbi Kellerman. He's like, no. So it's like as soon as I stepped towards it a little bit, like all of a sudden, boom, the window opened and God threw me in. And I was like freaking out and I was totally unprepared. I said, what do I teach? He goes, I don't know, just teach about your relationship with God or something. I went, oh my gosh, give me 5 minutes. Shut my eyes, prepared. Like, how do I do it? What are the 3 principles that would help you build your relationship with God? I don't know. And then I just had to talk from my heart to the class, and they loved it. And I loved it because I couldn't hide behind my notes. And then I realized that I really like this and I'm comfortable in it. So I think all that dance training and all the TV work and everything that happened before was really practice for this. That's really what looks very clear in retrospect. And so I was there for it in Neve teaching, ended up being on faculty there for 2-3 years. And then it all changed when I met Aaron Wolfson's right hand at a wedding.
Right. So he mentioned the story and he called you up on the stage last night.
Yeah.
Tell us that story. You were still in Israel, I guess, at the time. And
I was in Israel, but I flew out for one of my best friend's weddings in LA.
Okay.
And it was a surprise. It was a total surprise for her.
I guess it comes back to
I know,
not bite you down. Come back to bless you.
I'm a prankster.
Right.
And I got really pranked myself now.
That's awesome.
And it's so funny because I said I don't like surprises to him. He was really going to do it on the stage.
That's what I said. I said, and when the rabbi was giving the speech and about to call you up for this award, I said, this would be the perfect opportunity to do the proposal. The Jumbotron, it's like,
Because he knew I would freak out.
He would freak out.
And he was kind enough.
Oh, man, that would have been so much more entertaining for us. Think about us.
But I wouldn't have
Why being so selfish?
I wouldn't have enjoyed my own proposal.
It's not about you, it's about us. Come on, Jackie.
Yeah, no, we had fun after that.
Yeah.
So I went to the LA as a surprise to visit my friend Kimber. And we did one of those crazy things where we did a video in Israel with our friends, and then my other friend brought it to her. And in the video, at the end of the thing, I say, that's it. I'm so upset I can't be at Kimber's wedding. And I run off screen. And at that point in LA, she was watching the video with my other friend. And my other friend texts me under and says, now, I'd flown into LA. I was dressed in exactly the same clothes as I was on
Oh, that's
camera.
great.
And she said, now. And I ran off screen with Kimber, like watching. And I ran into her apartment. So
Amazing.
it's like I ran off screen and into the apartment. She literally also had a heart attack, couldn't breathe, was shaking and jumping up and down. So I was there for that wedding, and Rabbi Butler was there because he was very close to her also. And we met at a third meal or something. And I started sharing ideas about like what I'm doing and what I'd love to do for the Jewish people. Like as in, I had an idea of a program, and he loved the idea of a program. And he went, "You want to do it?" I'm like, I had no idea who I'm talking to. Like I think I'm talking to a rabbi. Like I have no idea. He's like the right hand man of one of the biggest philanthropists in the world. And he goes, "You want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, he just nods. And then like a couple months later, I'm running a program. We got $200,000 to sponsor this program. And I started running the first program, PERI, which stood for Peer Educator Research Internship. So that lasted for a good few years, before we moved on to this bigger leadership vision.
Wow. So what were your early experiences like getting involved in Jewish leadership and personally, and as the Jewish, as program person, what was that experience like? Was it challenging? Was it surprising in any way?
No idea what I was doing. Absolutely no idea. No idea. Again, it's the same idea that we've been talking about all week, that you don't have to be ready. You don't have to be ready to do big stuff in the world. You have to put up your hand and say, I'm willing to try. And that's what I was doing. I was willing to try. I knew I had enough basic skills, but I drove them crazy. I would call Rabbi Butler and Rabbi Refson and these big people who were in management roles at this point, but I didn't know that. And I'd say, okay, how do I run a Shabbaton? Like, how do I do like the simple logistics? I would be calling these big people for, right? And they were patient and they answered me and they told me step by step. And I was capable, so I caught on,
Right.
But I had no idea what I was doing. None. I hadn't done whatever training you need to have for these things. Like I just jumped in. I jumped in. I had an idea. I jumped in and I tried, and really I felt I got enormous assistance, from every level, from people and from God, and it was amazing.
It's incredible. Sometimes when a person comes back to Judaism, from a limited background, and they start investing and becoming more observant, and then they get behind the scenes into the, sort of where the sausage is made, so to speak, and start working for the Jewish community. There can be at times, disappointment, or you come in contact with the inevitable human failings that exist. Was that something that you encountered, and how did you deal with the petals coming off of the rose, perhaps at certain junctures?
No, I think I avoided that because I was learning for such a long time before I got into it. And I think when that happens, it's often when someone's very quickly just started to learn, started to become more observant, and then people see their strengths and their talents, and they throw them in the deep end to work. But they haven't quite cooked yet in themselves. They haven't developed and processed themselves in the right way to be really integrated and grounded in themselves. So then that's where the conflict happens. Whereas I feel I really was. I had the gift of the time. So
did you feel like you encountered those foibles when you were studying, and then you saw sort of people's humanity, or that you never even were bothered by it later on?
I was bothered by it when I saw, rabbis are human and they make mistakes and they're sometimes wrong and all of that kind of stuff versus the ideal image of Judaism. But at some point I realized when things go wrong or when things don't look right, it's really a reflection of those people as opposed to Judaism. And I was able, I think, successfully to separate the two, meaning I think that's what did it for me. I separated the fact that Judaism in its pure form, what it's meant to be in an ideal, is beautiful and incredible, and I look up to it, and it's holy and lofty. And whenever I saw the breakdown of that with people, it's because on some level those people had flaws, and all people have flaws. So I was able to separate the people from, don't judge Judaism by the Jews, but you kind of have to judge Judaism by the Jews, but I would be able to separate Judaism from the Jews. I think that really made a huge difference. I tell that to my students now.
Yeah. No, it's at a critical point. It's hard, though, because at the end of the day, we're social beings and we model ourselves after people, and people are preaching the fact that this will make you a better person. This will, people aren't saying, well, this is an interesting abstract piece of wisdom. They're professing that this will make you a better person. And then when you see people that maybe aren't living, walking the walk, that can be disappointing.
Well, I made sure that I surrounded myself with enough people who were. And even though I saw they weren't perfect, because no one's perfect,
sure.
I saw their weaknesses, overall they were pretty darn good compared to the average person walking around in society. So when you have en masse lots and lots of people who are at least attempting to live a righteous life, moral life, spiritual life, aligning with this map called Torah, and they're trying, and the husband and wives relationships are better, and the kids are generally better, and they really were. I saw many, many families that it was genuinely much better, higher quality than anything I saw. So I was like, I don't know if this Torah thing's true, but if this is what it produces overall, I want that. And so when I think if we take away the idea of needing perfection and looking for the negative in something versus how much good there is, which is hard, then you can see things in more clear perspective. But I made sure it's so important who you surround yourself with. There were a couple people mentors that I felt, didn't give me the right advice or just weren't plugged in to people enough. They might have not known a lot of Torah. They didn't know how to apply it in a wise way. And so those people I drifted away from. I found new mentors. Again, it was the people, not the Judaism, that I threw out. And that's what it really pains me the most when I see people throw out Judaism because they had a bad experience with the person. It's like, right. No, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But
right.
Sometimes people look for an excuse also. They want to just do that. But yeah, that's how I coped.
How did your career evolve from that point? It's been quite a few years since then. You've done a lot of different projects, new projects. Of course, we're sitting here in Spain at one of those amazing projects. What were some of the next steps? And did you kind of have a clear direction of where you wanted to go with things? At
that point, I think once you start working for the Jewish people and you live in Israel, it's like you kind of live by a different set of rules. Meaning I didn't know I was doing this program, Perry, and then all of a sudden, Eli Horn, who's at Tzaddik, said, we need leaders, we need generals. We need leaders to lead the Jewish people, young leaders. I want you to do something. And I was like, so funny because I was actually the keynote speaker for the National Young Leaders Day all through Australia. They would fly me to every city and I'd have 13,000 people in a Superdome and we would speak about leadership. So I actually had this background and passion in this. And then all of a sudden, again, what I thought was for that really was practice for this. And they said, run a leadership program. So again, no idea what I'm doing, have no clue. It hasn't been done before, can't look up other models in the Jewish world so clearly. And we just started a little thing called JSL, Jewish Student Leaders. We ran one bus a year. It was like from leaders from all around the world who were not observant but growing and interested and passionate. And we looked at a combination of the Jewish foundational learning, but also how to develop them as leaders to do something, to take responsibility and put your hand up and say, I'll try. And we did it. And we saw when you get the right people in the right role and you empower them and you inspire them, it was unbelievable what they could achieve. And when I saw it with enough people to see, even if it wasn't the whole bus, it was enough people to see this model works. The model works if you get the right people and you have the right kind of inspiration, and then you provide the right infrastructure, which we really kept learning each year. So I ran, that was in 2011, and I ran that model for about 8 years, tweaking, refining, getting different people on board. Rabbi Shlomo Farhi came on board for about 5 years of it. And so we were a great team for many years about, how to develop this model of a blend between leadership, Judaism, doing a project when you go back to your community, and having this on the trip. And it's now turned into a monster. I mean, it's like literally scaled to 600 people. I think Aaron Wolfson had like an aha moment a few years ago when we had a big summit in Brazil, and he saw all these leaders passionate, wanting to stand up and give over their ideas and what they want to do. And he was like, oh my gosh, the future is young leadership. And I was like, yes, someone gets it. And he decided, to his credit, to just change direction and invest very heavily and significantly in it. And hence why we're sitting here with 600 leaders from around the world, 21 countries, in Toledo, Spain, of all places, discussing how to help the Jewish people.
What do you think young leaders can do that professionals can't?
I think they understand the mindset and the headspace of their peers. I think they're more trustworthy and reliable and not as scary because they don't have an agenda, meaning other Jews would trust them more. I think that they have creative ideas that are more modern and millennial, if you want to use that word, because they're in that world, and the professionals offer a generation or two even away from that, and they lose touch. And I think it also inspires them. It inspires the leaders to grow when they take on that responsibility. So it helps them also on a personal level.
What are a couple of things that you've seen people execute, and as leaders, what are some of the really cool initiatives, projects, undertakings?
Yeah, we've just been giving out Power of One awards and team awards here, even this week, over from the last couple of years, the last year. And even just some of those are amazing. Like one young woman, Clara Gelwasser from Germany, she just opened up 3 branches of OLAMI in Germany. And she not only opened them, but she trained young leaders how to run them. So there's now 3 branches running that a leader set up and organized, And
there's no staff. Is there staff coming in to help?
We have one staff member in Germany who floats around between the branches, but he can't run all the branches simultaneously.
Yeah.
So he shows up once a week and does a class and does whatever, but she's the one that's created the program. Then we had Tikva Odessa just did a film festival. They made short films themselves, the leaders, of how the beauty of Judaism, and they put it on as 4 big film festival events in Tikva, in Odessa, in the organization Tikva, and over 100 people came to each event, and then 40 new people stayed involved weekly with this organization, all run by the students. The events were run, the videos were produced.
By the way, they played them last night. I didn't understand a word of them.
I think there was something.
Now I know how the Russians feel when they're listening to the English language.
That was amazing. And Ollie from Ollie Annisfeld from HUK created an online media channel called JTV. He felt it was missing. He has now 250,000 views a month.
Unbelievable.
And we gave him a $20,000 grant, and he's amazing. So they're just all the same young leaders that were just in our organizations. All these people. It's really incredible. Then we had Josh Snyder from Rutgers, who just single-handedly got 22 people to do a 10-week learning course on Judaism, which is more than some rabbis can do, honestly. I mean, He really is doing more than some of our professionals. Again, we should hire these people. That's my honest opinion. They're real leaders. They're passionate. They're driven. They're motivated. They believe in the cause. They're growing themselves. It's amazing.
Is that a direction you think this will go?
Yeah, I hope so. I think we'd be stupid not to hire. We've already hired. I hire students all the time. But on a macro level, the strategy, I think we should do it. Yeah.
Do you think that when they become professionals, do you think that will change the dynamic, or they can preserve those qualities?
I think it's about age, and it's about youthfulness of spirit more than anything else. At some point maybe, but you got to stay grounded. we always recommend they go to Israel to learn for a little bit, to really get a foundation. It's very hard to get a foundation in Judaism without going to Israel ever, to learn for a period of time. So we try and support them doing that. I've got actually one of my young employees who I hired is in Israel right now learning for 8 weeks, and then she's going to come back to the job. So we save the job for them. So what company does that usually?
Right.
And so that we support their spiritual growth as much as anything.
What are some of the challenges you've encountered in this particular space, this part of the process with student leadership? Obviously, every initiative we attempt, as you said, there's been tweaking and so forth. What's difficult about it, and how are you addressing it?
I think the most difficult thing is to find the young leaders, the right ones, their connectors. I think that's the hardest part. Once you have those, it's so easy because they're responsible, they're reliable, they're passionate, they're interested, and then you can just work with them because they're great. That's the hardest part. How do you find them? How do you weed them out? How do you, help guide them? And
how have you resolved that for yourself?
I think the key is through other young leaders. So asking them to replace themselves would be the best way. We haven't gone hardcore into it yet, but that's what I'm aiming to do now with these guys.
Yeah, it's not easy to find the right ones.
Well, we rely on the rabbis, so sometimes they do also know. They also do know, and also not investing in the wrong people.
Well, a lot of times somebody might look like the right person and have a certain outer panache and a polish to them, and yet not really willing to roll their sleeves up.
Right. So you have to test it, pilot, and don't be scared to fire. That's the question. Hire and fire. It's more important that you can fire than hire.
Right.
Winning in a nice way.
How do you navigate that, though, in terms of also having a personal relationship with students and also having a mentoring sort of relationship with a student, and then at the same time sort of being a boss, being an employer of sorts?
Keeping it very action-based, task-based. This is what the job is. Can you do X, Y, and Z by this time? And then you have a very clear factual thing of well, if you haven't done it, so we talked about that and we wanted it done by this time and you're not able to do it, so maybe it's not the right fit for you, without it feeling like a rejection.
Right.
I think that's good management, to keep it goal-focused, task-focused. It's not about them. Be super warm. Don't cut off from them personally, but that's a challenge.
What do you think still needs to happen? What haven't you done yet? You probably feel you're just starting.
Yeah, we just started.
Where do you want to go with all this? Obviously, you said hiring students, the best ones.
Yeah, I think we need a tiered strategy of a pathway of leadership, or as we call them, layers of leadership.
LOL.
So layers of leadership, what do you do after this? What is the next step? And then eventually the top of that would be hiring someone.
Right.
When there's one of the stars shine out and you see that they're a superstar, so you can hire them.
Are there other programs you think that need to be implemented to support this whole infrastructure?
Yeah, I think now there needs to be a higher tier learning, like a JLF, turned into JLF. So we can have a smaller, more elite, the gold leaders who get to this gold status. We have these 2 statuses. And so those that get to the higher status can be invited onto a higher, leadership program. Maybe they get more responsibility. We pay them something. I don't know. We have to look at it. Not pay them something, pay them as a job if they really want to work for the Jewish people.
Right. It's an evolving enterprise, which is exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
It's exciting. Where do you see your own personal role? And now that your own life is evolving, how do you see your own role continuing to develop and change?
Oh, can I get back to you on that in a year?
We'll do that in about a year, yeah.
In about a year, I'll know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. It's another unknown adventure journey.
Right.
That is really exciting. So maybe I have to pull back a little bit from work to focus on that part of my life. And I don't know. We'll see. It involves moving to LA.
Wow. Things could be worse,
Things could be worse because LA is the same weather as Sydney.
Similar weather, right?
Same, yeah.
The question is, which has better beaches?
For sure, Sydney.
Sydney has better beaches?
100%.
Now, is it also really cold water in Australia? Because in LA, the water is very cold, and I don't like it.
No, it's nice.
I prefer
in the
Miami.
Summer, it's cool, but it's nice.
And your fiance has a background in Jewish outreach as well, and
we both
Jewish communal work.
Crazy. We both worked at the same center, and we also became both observant at 29 years old.
Wow.
And we both lived in Israel for about 7-8 years. I mean, there's just all these mirrors and parallels.
And of course, his brother's been on the podcast, Yom Tov Glaser.
His brother's been on the podcast.
So that's obviously probably what really cemented things, I would imagine.
And when I first showed up in Israel, I spent a lot of time in their house and got very close to his wife. And I was
really
in their house a lot about 12 years ago.
Really?
And so they were freaking out also. Because,
that's awesome.
Yeah. How do we... Well, I wasn't in touch with them the last 6-8 years because I was here. I mean, here being not Spain, Toledo. Everyone's really happy. Yeah, it's really crazy, the connections.
Well, it's another act of God. It's crazy, and it's great to be here in Toledo, but also to watch how this entire process has been unfolding, and both in your life and in the organization at large. And I can say that the organization and certainly the Jewish people more broadly are lucky to have your amazing investment. So we're very grateful and certainly pleased and honored that you joined us on the program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I feel blessed and privileged. It's been an amazing journey.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks.
This has been Ari Koretsky on Jews You Should Know. Please visit us at JewsYouShouldKnow.com and subscribe at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you consume podcasts. Find us on social media at Jews You Should Know. If you'd like to become a supporter of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate that, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Jews You Should Know. Finally, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review so that we can continue to grow and introduce many more people to Jews You Should Know.